All right. This will be part two. It's still it's still the 27th, August 2024, and my internet shut down. All right, so I don't know why, but Jill made me a hotspot. I was just about to start to explain this waterer, and one of our faithful tribe people asked me to do this, and so I want to do it. And I'm just going to go through how this waterer works. My message tonight was, it's archived now, so if you want to listen to that, you can go back and listen to it from the beginning. But this is just going to be about this waterer here. And I started off by showing you this waterer. It's made by a company called Little Giant. This one's about 15 years old, and you can see it's discolored from the sun. They always make them red, like, so it would have been that color when we got it brand new, but it's 15 years old and it's still completely serviceable. It's tough as can be. I've had 0 of these break down on me. Even if we leave water in them and they freeze, the part that breaks is this little part on the top. And this is an aftermarket part. This is a part that I make, so I can adapt it up to a different water line system. This is made so that you would hook it up to a hose on the top here. This is a NPT thread, National Pipe Thread, and you have to get an adapter that goes to a hose thread on top. But it's cumbersome having a 5/8 hose going into this, and it's too much water, I think. So what we did is we adapted it to this hose. This is a barb fitting that I just put on a piece of PVC, a PVC plug that fits into this perfectly. And so then I can run a tube like this. I get spools of this tubing. It's PVC tubing. It's flexible. It's pretty cheap stuff, and it just fits right on this barb fitting. You just push it on there, and it's makes a good seal, and it will never pop off on you. Generally, they don't. But anyway, the way this works is if I disconnect this here with a half a turn and take this apparatus out, you'll see a spring and then 2 jam nuts. These round things here are jam nuts, and they set the level that you want the water to be in this fountain. So if it's too high and it's running over, then you back these down. If it's too low, you back them the other way until you get it the way you want it. And then you push these 2 jam nuts together, you wind them together, and then you jam them. So you take something like a plier and you put it on there and you just jam them together so they're not going to move. And you've got the level that you want. So I set these things up years ago, and I've never changed them since. If they're right, they're good. But the way this works is there's an air valve in the end there. Just a regular air valve that you would see on any pneumatic tire, whether it's a car or a motorcycle or a big piece of equipment or a bicycle. It's the same. And these things are real super cheap, and they're designed to work. They hold air, and if they hold air, they're going to hold water just as well. The thing that could happen is if you got a particle in there and it would hold this seat. There's a little neoprene seat that seats inside of here. And if you had something that was stuck in there, my dad used to call it a bee's whisker, your water would be running over, but not very much. And then you'd see it run over, and you know you got to do something. So what you would do is you'd take this out and let it flush, and then put it back in, and you'd probably be good. To get this out, if you don't have a Leatherman, you should. I have this Leatherman on me all the time. If not this one, my other one. And if not that one, my other one. Yeah, I got 3 of them. Because if I ever break one of them, I send it in and they send me a new one. They're real good about that. And these things cost, I think these things are $90, but they're worth every penny of it. And I could do a whole thing on the Leatherman tool. This is a Surge. It's the biggest one they have, and it fits my hand. The one that's down from this is a Wave, and that's what most people use. I use this one because I cut a lot of wire with it, and this one's actually got a high carbon steel insert in here that cuts wire really good. So that's why I use this one. But I've had these things for years, and I always have a Leatherman on me. Always. I don't care if I'm at a wedding or a funeral, I'll have it on me, because the day that I don't have it on me, that's the day that I'll need it to do something that's kind of important. Okay, so the way this works is the weight of the water in here will either push on the valve up to add more water to it, but then when it gets heavy, gravity, it'll pull this down, and then the valve seats and it shuts the water off. So an important thing, I remember showing this to somebody one time, and they said, doesn't matter what I do, it keeps running over. But they were just setting this on the ground. So it was in the position where the valve was open all the time. You have to hang it, and you can do that various ways. But the way I do it now is I just put a piece of fencing wire on here and wrap it around the top, sort of like a cork on a champagne bottle, very similar to that, and then just hang it from that. I'll hang a piece of wire from the inside of the chicken tractor to this loop, and it just hangs. And then when I move the chicken tractor, I've got an extra, 15 feet or so of this line, this flexible line. That's a very small piece right there, and it's on a T, right? This is a barb T fitting. So like with my chicken tractors, I'm running 5 of them right now, and I'll have one water line going out, and then at the back of each of the chicken tractors, I have a T, and there's about 15 feet of extra line. So when I'm moving them, or somebody's moving them individually, we're not stretching the wire. You invented a DIY Plashin drinker. No, I didn't make these. This is Little Giant makes these. I adapt them up to run off the micro sprinkler lines, and then I made my own hanger and my own fitting. But the waterer itself was made by Little Giant, and you can still get them. I think they're made in like Wisconsin or someplace, but it's really good quality. It's 15 years old, and it works as good as the day it came out of the package. And I think I saw these. Oh, I know I saw them at Family Farm and Fleet one time, and they were $25, right? Worth every penny. And the conversation that I was having with Belva and Gary on our consulting call, Wednesday night consulting call, was the importance of these when you're watering chickens and they're out on the field. If they run out of water, that's when they all want water. And then as soon as you try to put water in there, they all got to have it at one time. And my chicken tractors are 10 by 12, 120 square feet. And I put 80 in each one. So if all 80 birds want to get a drink out of this thing at one time, it equals wet birds. So this system is so dependable that if it's working in the morning, I am 99 and 44% sure that it's going to be working in the evening. And the guy that I got doing chicken tractors right now, my son Jim, he is on it, right? So I've never gone out there and found chickens without water, because that's the worst thing for chickens is no water, right? Even though they'd probably be fine for 2 days without water. But if they don't have it, and then you introduce it to them, they all got to be on it at the same time. Right. And then they get wet, and then the sun goes down, it cools off. In the morning, you have dead birds. So that is almost standard with doing it with the bucket waterers and the bell waterers that you see. You got to fill those buckets twice a day. 80 birds will go through 10 gallons of water. And so when you go out to do evening chores, a lot of times it's dry. And you introduce water into it, and the water starts coming down through it, and they all freak out to try and get it. And you either got to get in there and push them away and let some of them drink, or none of them get any water because they're pulling down on the water and they're keeping the water running all the time, and the water's going everywhere and they get wet. So with this system, it's plumbed right into the water system on the farm, just the hose. And all 5 chicken tractors have water 24/7. And another thing about it that is an asset is the system is closed. So the water is coming from the well through the pump to the chicken waters, and it's never exposed to the air. So it doesn't pick up any impurities. There's no grit that gets in there or anything like that. And when the chicken water is not being used, when they're not drinking out of it, it just closes. So you're not running water all the time. You don't want that because your pen will get wet and soggy. They'll walk around in it and they'll get everything else wet, and then they get wet. You just don't want the birds to get wet. It's not so critical this time of the year, them getting wet, as it would be, let's say, in the early spring or fall when it gets cold at night. That's when you wind up, especially young birds, you'll wind up with dead birds, and then it's bad. Then you have a couple of dead birds and they'll all pile on them, and then the heat starts, and then more of them pile, and they pile, and they pile, and you have a problem. And I've been there. That's how I know. The line that goes to this, what I do is I have a kit, and it's just like this, sort of like a tackle box, fishing tackle box. This one is like a Rubbermaid deal. And I have everything in here that I need to repair the system. And this stays out with the brooder. So if we ever need parts for the other systems, they're here. And some of the things that we use that I can show you is this. This one's broken, actually. That part, I'll show you that in a minute. But this is a regulator. It takes system pressure on the farm, which here is like 35, and it knocks it down to 20. And that PSI stands for pounds per square inch. And the reason I do that is I use black lines. Don't ever use translucent lines, because if the sunlight gets in there, it'll form algae on the inside of the lines, and that will, as it flows, that will plug this valve, and you'll forever be taking that valve out and flushing the line and putting it back in, and then it's plugged 2 days later. This thing ain't working. When you buy drip line, it's a 1/4 inch line. I just showed you a piece of it here, and then I put it down, and I don't see it now. I don't know what I did with it, but it's 1/4 inch PVC line. You can get it at Drip Depot or Drip Co. Sometimes I even see it at Home Depot in their irrigation system. It's usually on the end of an aisle, facing the back of the store. Every store I've been to that has that. And when I see it, if I need it, I get it. It's cheap. It's like $4 for 50 feet. It used to be $4 for 100 feet. No kidding. But even at $4 for 50 feet, it takes the place of a hose. You know, running a 50-foot hose, that's an expensive hose. And running hoses is not good, because if you have a problem with the hose, let's say you run it over, a calf steps on it, something, and it breaks, or it's sitting in the sun with pressure on it, right? It can just burst. And I've seen that happen, because you don't want to spend $100 on a hose that's just going to lay there. So you buy a cheap hose, and that lays in the sun, hot day, pressure on the line, it swells, breaks. Or you run it across a driveway, say, and you got to drive over it. Or you got to get out and disconnect it and then drive through and then reconnect it. You don't want to do that. So the 1/4-inch line, black, I've seen it brown too, dark brown. Either one, they're about the same. It's so small that you can drive right over it and nothing happens. You won't even know you drove over it. Or, you know, the only time that anything's ever happened is when I don't see it in the grass and I hit it with a lawnmower or something, and then it breaks. So that's a regulator, but I don't always use them. I used to, and it made sense, but I don't know as you really need them. And if you do use them, this screws on to the hose or the outlet of the building, you know, the little petcock there. This screws onto that, and then you have this. This one is broken right now, and I don't throw them away because I repair them. They have a barb on the end. Like this. That's a straight barb. So if I have two pieces of line and they're not long enough, I can connect them together with this. So you take your line and you push it on this side, then you push it on the other side, and then now you've got a longer piece. But this piece would have been sticking out of there like that, so I can connect onto this. And this thread on here is hose. It's a hose thread. So pipe thread and hose thread are two different threads. So once you understand this, it's not that hard. But at first, they don't connect up. But any hardware store will have an adapter to make them work. You know, it's got threads on both ends. On one side, it's got hose threads. On the other side, it's got pipe threads, two different threads. And there's a lot of different types of threads. There's hydraulic lines, there's water lines, there's gas lines are different, right? And they're all different for a reason, good reason. But this, the important part of it is this here. And what I will do is drill this out. See that hole there? I will drill that out just big enough that I can fit this in. And then I'll put it in with RTV, rubber texture vulcanization. That's what it's called, RTV. You can find RTV anyplace. They use it in automotive. There's this stuff that I really like. It's called shoe goo. You know, they have it all over the place, and it's really good stuff. And you put some of that on here, drill the hole just the right size so it'll push in with the shoe goo. Don't get any in the hole. And then let it sit overnight, and the next day it's rock solid. And that's how I made this. Okay, so this is a pipe thread, National Pipe Thread, NPT. And this PVC plug, PVC is polyvinyl chloride, PVC, right? And there's a lot of different types of PVC. There's flexible, there's non-flexible, rigid, and PEX, PEX, that is PVC. I don't use any PEX out on chicken tractors, but I do use it plumbing in like the milk house and the butcher shop and all that. Any place that I need to run water, I use PEX. And I think it's the best there is right now. It's the best thing going. The alternative to that is copper lines. And, PEX is cheap. It's flexible. To put ends on it, you just have a swedging tool. I don't have any of those in this kit. I have another kit like this. See, this kit is placarded drip irrigation. My other kit, I have several kits like this, and the kit that I use for PEX is placarded PEX, right? So when this is sitting on the shelf, I don't have to open it up to see what's in it. I know what's in it, and I use this all the time. So I could do this literally blindfolded. I've done it so much. But this is a good technology to wade into, because it's not only limited to this. You can use it for irrigation. They make little sprinklers that you can put on it, that you can sprinkle plants, starter plants. In the greenhouse, we use it. It's really great. You turn it on and all these little tiny sprinklers go on and just, they just really hose the place down. If I ran a big sprinkler in there in the greenhouse, that wouldn't work too good. They make misters. That literally put out a mist. And I've seen where guys will put a ring of them on a fan. They'll turn it on and then face it at a living area. And it's blowing in mist. By the time it makes it to the people, you can't even see it, but it has a real good cooling effect. I would say that if I was operating my chicken tractors down south, where it's 100-degree days, day after day after day, I would probably put a mister in there, because you can change the local climate in the chicken tractor by doing that. Okay, so running 1/4-inch lines, cheap. If something goes wrong, you just have this little stream of water. You're not going to run your pump all night. You're not going to flood anything with it. You can adapt this to a valve. Little Giant makes those as well, and they're trough waterers. So it's got a float in it, and as soon as the trough is full, the float comes up and it shuts the valve off. And I actually run 1/4-inch lines to troughs that I use to water cattle. And so it'll be running all night long, filling it up. And it's filling real slow, but the cows aren't drinking at night anyway. So then in the morning, they've got a full trough. As soon as they take a mouthful, it turns it on and it will refill it. It wouldn't work if you had a small trough and a lot of cows, because they would drain it too quick and they would knock the trough over and they'd beat all the equipment up. It only works if you have like 5 cows and 275 gallons worth of capacity, because each cow is going to drink about 5 gallons at a time. And so 5 cows, 25 gallons. They're only going to drain it down so far. It's still going to have enough weight that they can't knock it around. It'll refill before they go back to it, right? Cow's going to drink about 10 gallons a day. Cow, steer, whatever. Okay, so I hope Belva gets this message before I get cut off. Let's see. It looks like Sarah's the only one here. Sarah, what's your favorite way to water pigs? Oh, okay, good question. If you have one of these, and I run 3/4-inch PVC at the root of the fence in my hog growing area, on the outside of the fence, right? So they can't get it. And periodically at fence posts, I'll run a riser up. So I have a T on a 3/4 inch line. And the T that I use is PVC. I don't have any here. But it looks just like this T, only it's designed to fit 3/4 inch black line, which is the same as this line. It's just 3/4 inch. And I do that because that's the way I did it. If I was going to redo it, like if I was you and you're saying, well, how do you do it? What's the best way to do it? I would plug this in at the building, wherever you have water, plug this in, and you could run 500 feet of 1/4 inch line, and you run it to the side of your pig pen, and then you put one of these on the end, 1/4 inch, and then you close it down, close the valve down at the house, let's say, or at the barn, wherever you have water. Close it down until this is just going beep, just a little bit, right in a corner maybe, but make sure it's out there far enough so you're not going to compromise your fence posts. And it'll just hit the ground, and after a while, it'll puddle, and they'll drink out of that puddle. After a while, you'll have a pretty good sized puddle there, and they'll get in it, they'll roll around in it, and then that puddle seals itself because of the mud. And then you just keep this running in. And when the pigs come around, I mean, I've been criticized on this by friends that, well, your pigs are drinking out of muddy water. And I have observed my pigs now for 20 something years. And if they have clear, clean water in a trough, let's say, and there's mud puddle next to it, they will drink out of the mud puddle. And the clear, clean one, they will try to get in it or flip it over to see what's under it. So pigs drinking out of muddy water is not a bad thing. I'm just saying. And them having a wallow to get in is a very good thing, because if they don't have a wallow, now you're going to be needing pesticides to deal with different, parasitic little animals that will like to ride around on the pigs. I don't think they get fleas. Yeah, they do get fleas. We don't have them here. Had them in Montana. And for a while, because the guy at the feed store said, oh, you're going to want to get this spray, and then you got to spray them down periodically. Well, what's in that spray? Oh, it's just a pesticide. You can use it any place. You can put it on your you can drink this stuff. It's so safe. So it kills the bugs, but it doesn't kill the pig. But I'm sure it's not good for the pig. So I don't do that anymore. I just make sure there's mud out there. They roll around in it. Any little creature that gets on them that would like to stay on them is going to find that, well, it's not a good place to be, because this pig is going in the mud all the time. And pigs love mud. They love to roll around in it, especially a day like today where it's hot. I put feed out for them, and they were in the mud. They looked up and they're like, nah, I think we'll just stay here in the mud. So that's how I do the pigs. And you could do that very easily. And then at the end of the season, it's not going to work in the wintertime. I've tried it. I thought that if I had it running in the wintertime, that it wouldn't freeze, but it gets cold enough here where it does freeze. So I suppose if I didn't have this end on, that little end, that really restricts the flow, because even a 1/4 inch, if you run that for 24 hours, that's a lot of water. I don't want to run that quite that much, because I don't need it. They don't need it. And I'm feeding, the biggest group of pigs that I have here is 15 400 pounders. And they don't need that much water. So I restrict it down. And in the wintertime, if it's restricted, it will freeze, at least where I am, but it gets pretty cold here. And I'm talking, 10 down to 10 below. In there, even a hose running will freeze. unless it's really gushing, it'll freeze. And then you got to have a valve on a building that's open. And if it freezes there, now you could have some problems. So for watering pigs in the wintertime, I am fortunate, grateful that we have snowfall. So in my 20 years of doing this, if I have water out and I have snow, the pigs aren't really interested in the water except to play in it. But as far as what they're going to consume, they're going to eat snow. You can go on the internet right now and say, Mark said, and people will criticize that up and down, left and center. And they will tell you pigs will not grow on eating snow. They will not grow. And I'm here to tell you that they will. So I do it like that. I've been doing that for at least 18 years here. And I used to put water out for them in the wintertime. And I noticed it'd always be empty, but it's not like they're drinking it. They're just tipping it over, right? You'd think they'd go up to it. Oh, drink of water. Let me just drink it, but don't spill any. No, they tip it over. And so then you try to get something like a big tire and you put some concrete in it so they can't tip it over. And you have a nice little thing that fits down in it and you fill it with water. And it's 20 below or 10 below or even 0 or even 20. And the thing freezes solid. Now what do? Well, tip it over and no, you put concrete in it. Now you can't tip it over. And then it's going to freeze to the ground. Now you really can't tip it over. Well, get your ice chipper out. Yeah, and then you cut the rubber dish that goes inside of it. And then when you put water in, it leaks out. So I've done it all. I've done heated waterers. And then they're not foolproof, and as soon as you lose power for a little while, it freezes up. So I'm not saying, if you live someplace where you don't have snow, then you got to figure it out. And that means you're taking water out every day. So if you got a bunch of pigs, you're going to be hauling a bunch of water, or haul a hose out, fill the water trough, and then haul it back in. Because that if you leave it out, it's going to freeze. And I have emptied hoses a lot in my day, right? In the wintertime, I got to fill something up for the cattle, especially my old system. And I say to myself, well, I'm going to empty this hose out. And so I pull that hose up over a branch or something, and I pull it all the way over. I got all that water out of there. It's not going to freeze. Somehow I didn't get it all out and it freezes. Or maybe it's just the inside of it freezes or the walls. And then as soon as a little bit of warm water hits it, it all crystallizes and plugs the hose. And then now I got a plugged hose. And then you got a 50-foot hose that you got to bring in the house, right? So I don't want to fool with that anymore. I don't do it that way. I do have a system that I should share with you for watering my milk cows. Their trough is in the loafing shed. So that's a place where they can go. And they're mostly in there in the summertime to get in the shade. If they don't have if they don't feel like walking out under the trees. But in the wintertime, when it's blowing, they'll go in there. And I do have their trough in there, and it's 275 gallons. Now you can't put a valve on there in the wintertime, like a shutoff valve, because it'll freeze. So what I do is I just have an open line to it, a PEX line. And when we start milking, we open it up. And then when we finish milking, we shut it off, hopefully. And you might say, well, is there still water in the line? There is. But that line goes into a heated part of the barn, and I heat it with just a really small electric heater, ceramic electric heater that runs all the time. And that little room stays warm enough that nothing freezes in there. So that's how I do that. So you can follow me for more tips on how to water your animals in the wintertime and summertime. It's more critical in the summertime that they have water. That's my favorite way to water pigs. Actually, my favorite way to water pigs is not water them at all. Let them eat snow. People will freak out when you say that, though. They always do. Okay, Sarah says, okay, wait a minute. She says, have you ever had geese in with your chickens? I've got about 40 geese in with 300 hens, and as much as I like the goose eggs, the geese dirty the water constantly. I am planning on separating them. No, not that many. I've had a few here and there. And I do have a duck in there with my laying hens right now, one that got away on processing day. And he's been here ever since. Big duck. But you're right. I mean, waterfowl are going to go into the water and put mud in there and everything. And yeah, I don't think that's a good idea for your chickens. I mean, a lot of what we do in farming is minimize a risk. Do I know that that's a risk? I don't. But I don't think I would do it just because you don't have to do it. And if you don't have to do it, why do it? So I would minimize the risk. Anytime I see something that I think could be questionable, I'll skip it. Okay, Sarah says, I need to set up waters like you have next summer. This was my first full year of farming. Last year was a half year, more or less. Right? Good on you. Welcome. Welcome to the struggle. McKenna is saying, I use the same, or Andrew. Why don't you get your own name on there, Andrew? It's kind of. Don't tell me that you go by McKenna online. I don't want to hear it. Don't tell me you have an alternate ego. Okay, I use the same on all my waters. Super cheap, Drip Depot, $100 for 1,000 feet. Oh, it's that much. Well, no, that's not much. That's not much. One Ranch 307. Anyone can farm till it rains. Rain makes mud. Sarah's gone. She said, good evening. One Ranch 307. Hi, Sarah. Set it up to never break. Yeah, that's the idea, right? But animals prove Murphy's Law. If it can break, it will, right? That's what Murphy's Law is, something that we talk about in aviation all the time. Murphy's Law. If it can break, it will. Somehow, something will go wrong. Sarah's saying, thanks for the pig water info. I'm in Oregon, so you don't get that kind of snow. My pigs get water year round. Okay, I've seen the Mangalitses in Hungary and Russia without all the winter snow. In Russia too, huh? Right on. I haven't been to that neck of the woods. I'd like to, though. Like to. I've had Mangalitses now since 2009 is when I got them. 2009. Yeah, I was the first one in Michigan. I was one of the first ones in the United States, actually. And many people have come and gone, many, and we've stayed with it. That's another principle that I think is huge in this career field, is when you pick something, stay with it. Stay with it until you really wring it out, and it's not going to work for you. Well, the nice thing about Mangalitses is they're low maintenance. They eat anything. Really, they do. Mine eat straw. I mean, if I have nothing to give them, which I'm not there anymore. In the early days I was, I'd give them hay. And at first, they weren't too thrilled with it. But after a while, they lived with it. They ate it. And after a while, they would run to it when I would drop a bale in with them. And they would eat the whole thing. I have even, get this, somebody went over on the state land that's close by us, and some idiot did this. Cut a whole bunch of limbs off of a white pine, big one too, then dropped the white pine and took it. I have no idea why. It was a dumb thing. It was right by the road, and they left all the limbs. Limbs were this big. And it's just sitting there. Half of them are in the road, and we got to go through there. So I just got tired of looking at it, and I thought, I'm just gonna go hook onto them with a chain and pull them. And before I knew it, I had enough limbs that I could hardly pull it with my tractor, right? Because the road was slick. It was in wintertime. And I pulled them home, and I threw some in with the Mangalitzes. And they were not thrilled, but they were eating it. So I towed the whole thing right in through the gate, the whole pile of them. And in no time, they had stripped every needle off of those white pines. And then they went to work on the bark on there. And by spring, those limbs were so dried out because they had gotten all the bark off of them that I was able to pile them up, burn them right in the pen. I burned them in the pen. The pigs ate the charcoal. Yeah, I'm not here to say that they got any nutrition out of it, but they ate it. And that's when we discovered the whole biochar, deworming, soil amendment. You run biochar through a pig, they inoculate it, they put it in the soil. The field that I had them on, they were on that field because I couldn't cut hay off of it. And now, if I planted hay in there, I would have really good hay, right? I have 2 sow pens, and I switch them. Actually, it's quite interesting what happened this year. I put them on field number 1, I would call it. I took them off field 2 because I'd been out on field 2 for about 5 years. That's the one right by the house. If you ever come here, it's got the loading chute in it and got a nice structure in there for them. And then I put porta huts in when they're farrowing. But I put them over on field 1 to get them off of here so I could cultivate this and just let a lot of that manure kind of get used, the nutrient get used. But on field 1, they cleared it. They took everything off of it. And what came up in its place was mullein. Mullein. It's a weed, right? Sometimes they call it lamb's ear or something like that. Not lamb's quarter. Yeah, I think they call it lamb's ear. And supposedly, if you don't have toilet paper, you can use it. It's real soft. It's like velvety, but they don't eat it. So the field is covered with it, this mullein. And my wife uses it for stuff. So I pulled up a bunch of big plants for her. Big old root on the bottom of it. It's too bad they don't eat it. Maybe they'll eat it when it gets cold. Okay. I meant to say my birds are on pasture. My geese get plastic pools too, but those dang geese mess up the chicken waters and don't stick to the goose waters. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Geese, they're a mess. Ducks, they're a mess. They make a mess. If you had a pond and they'd stayed on the pond, all that manure would sink down into the bottom of the pond. And then if you could irrigate out of that pond, wow, you would have something. I actually, this is like a little farm chat of what I want, but I have a small pond, an irrigation pond, and it's like 50 feet across. It's not very big. And when I irrigated out of it, that was one of the things I did. I was going to be a row crop guy. I was going to make vegetables, take them to farmer's market, and I'd be so proud of the vegetables. I got over that. But that field that I was irrigating, or that pond that I was irrigating out of, it's small. And now I just let my cows go in there. My my steers. They have access to it. So I'm not running a pump to water them. And in the wintertime, I will break ice if I have to. Last year I broke ice one time, only one time. They kept it open the rest of the time. So there's probably 15 of them in there. Last year there was maybe 20. They're all drinking 10 gallons a day. That's a lot of pump run time that I'm not having to do now. So that pond, I want to make the system better. So what I plan to do is make that pond bigger by about 3 times and make it deeper so it'll hold more water. And then I'm going to put ducks and geese on it. And hopefully they stay down there. And my dogs have access to it, so they'll protect them. And then I'm sure they'll multiply. And then I can harvest ducks and geese when I want them, right? And also their manure goes down into the bottom of it. And then when I do irrigate, because I want to start irrigating again, but I'm going to be irrigating a hay field that I have. And my plan for that irrigation is not just to get clear water up on that field. I want to get nutrient dense water up on that field. Then I think the best way to do that is by letting my cattle have access to it, because they occasionally, they're manuring near it. I don't think they manure in it, but the geese and the ducks certainly will. And while I'm at it, so long as it's going to be bigger and deeper, whenever we go fishing, let's say we catch a fish and we bring it home, but we don't feel like processing it right then, we'll just put it in a pond. And we've done that, actually. Not with wild fish. I mean, I think that would be illegal probably, or somebody would have a problem with it, I'm sure. But there's a fishery around here, and you can go and you can buy fish. And I bought little bass. I bought all they had, and they had like 15 of them. And I put them in, and the next year, those things were lunkers. They were actually lunkers. Because a friend of mine that lives in town, he had goldfish in a little pond in his, the little pump that bubbled, and they'd look at them in the summer, but it would freeze solid in the wintertime. So he said, "Hey, can I put these in your pond?" And I'm like, "I don't care." So he put them in the pond, and the next spring, there were clouds of goldfish in this pond. Literally clouds. I mean, the color of the pond would change as they all turned at the same time. It was fascinating to see. And they were all about this big. And when we put those bass in there, their numbers diminished quickly, and the bass got big quickly. So, farming is all about producing carbohydrates and proteins. And if you got a pond and you're not thinking about maybe raising some fish, you ought to think about it, because fish go really good with waterfowl. And then you can irrigate out of it too. We had a crazy, just a second, I got to blow my nose real quick. I don't want to do it. I don't want you to see me blow my nose. Okay, done. We had a crazy thunder and lightning storm, and my 6 Mangalitsa crosses got out. We have a great perimeter fence. It's been hilarious to see them free range. I've had too much to do to worry about it. Yeah. That's like belt and suspenders. We have a perimeter fence here too. And if my pigs did get out, which it happens once in a while. It's usually somebody leaves a gate open, though. They're still not going to get any further than the perimeter. Not that they want to anyway, because they really need to get back to their beds and where their food is. So I've never had any escape like out into the woods. That's kind of a misinformation there that's going to happen. Okay. Sarah says, I'm going to fix their fence tomorrow, but it's been fun to have them running all over our 22 acres. Whoa. Until they find your garden, then it's not going to be too fun. Oh, and I don't actually travel to Russia and Hungary. I just saw videos. Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks for the full disclosure. I messaged you a while back. I successfully used a medical clinic in Hungary to treat cancer. They believe mangalitsa is the perfect food. Very proud of their pigs. I don't recall seeing that message, Sarah. Recently. I haven't seen that. But maybe I'm not looking in the right spot for it. Could you tell me where you messaged me? Because I'd like to see that. You know, I thought about getting out of pigs. I really did, because pigs take up a lot of our time, and we don't eat a lot of pig. We eat a lot of beef and chicken. And but the reason I didn't get out of them is because they serve me quite well. You know, they make soil for me. They do a lot of digging on my behalf, and I can plant a field for them of turnips, and they will wolf all of them down. Not in the summertime, though. Be careful with that. It's got to get cold before they like to eat them. But you can plant other things, daikon radishes. Kale is becoming a real favorite of mine because it grows like crazy. And the more times you cycle the field through, the more nutrient dense the soil becomes, and the better the kale grows. And the kale has a real broad leaf on it. And I think that it's like a solar collector that it puts out. And I believe it puts a lot of sugar in the soil. I don't know, you know. But also daikon radishes have, when they go well, and they don't always. I've noticed that, and it doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason that I can determine. But sometimes we'll have daikon radishes that are 2 feet long and this big around, and have just beautiful cross section, just this sweet radish meat that I tell you, in the fall time, if I could go to the apple tree or the daikon patch and fight over the radishes with the pigs, I would take a daikon radish over our nice apples, our nice man apples, they call them. I'm not sure. I think they're transparents, and they're good, but the radishes are better. But they don't always work. They don't always go. Like the ones that I just let the pigs on 2 weeks ago, I made a video about it. The tops were really great, but the radish itself, not so good. They were stubby little things, and there was nothing in there I could eat. So they don't always work. So I don't think I've got that completely figured out. But kale, I think anybody can grow kale. And it's pretty good to eat, too. I'm not sure if it's good for you, honestly. I'm not sure. I've heard where it's not good for you. But it sure tastes good. I'm putting my pigs in a rough area of a pasture this winter, hoping they eat all the roots of the nasty blackberry and thistle there this winter and next spring. They will. Yep, done it. Good pigs. I just have 6. Yeah. I started with 2. And right now I'm keeping 5 sows and 1 boar, and I keep them in I keep them together all the time, like kind of run them like I call it the sounder method. And they just stay together as a family all the time. So I got them when they were all small. And then the first round of farrowing went horrible the first year. I lost all of them, but there was 6 sows. I lost 1 sow. I don't know what happened to her, but I found the remnants of her. A brand new red that I got from Sean Wise. I had 3 reds and 3 blondes. And then the first round of farrowing, all 6 of them went, and I wound up with about 6 baby pigs out of it. The rest of them, they farrowed, but then they died. Either they froze, they got laid on, they got eaten, but they disappeared. But I'm fretting over that because I do like a hands-off method. They have their huts in there. I provide them with bedding, or there's bedding on the field. And then they do what they do. And if they turn out to not be a good sow, then they go in the freezer. But of that group, I started with 4 reds and 3 blondes. I sold the sow that successfully did it, and she weaned her babies. She got pregnant again, and I sold her to a friend. And then the other ones, they did a round, and it was a good round. We got a bunch out of that. One of them's out of cycle now, though. I don't know why. One of the blondes is out of cycle. So she's big and fat right now, and any day, and I hope it works out. Yeah, they'll eat everything. They'll eat everything. Well, that stuff they'll eat. Like they won't eat mullein. They won't eat Jimson weed. Those are the only 2 things that we grow that they don't like. They like amaranth. They like pigweed. They like ragweed. They like all the grasses they eat. It's not much that they don't eat. Apparently mullein they don't, but we'll see, like the season's early. The plants change as the season progresses, and so the characteristics of the plant change. So at some point they may say, hey, this is good, and they'll eat it. Like cows don't want to eat lamb's quarter early in the season. They don't seem to like it. And that's when we eat it. That's when we like to eat it. But then late in the season, when the stalks are tough and everything, they'll go crazy on it. So it changes. Okay, Sarah's saying, actually, it was during a live like this probably last fall. I've been very lucky. I stick to an animal-based ketogenic diet. I just thought it was such a funny coincidence about the clinic in Hungary. Man, I'd like to know about that. I would really like to know about that. Maybe I commented on it and it just didn't stick in my mind. But there's something about the Mangalitsa fat that draws people. There's something about that. So we have customers that come and only buy fat. And they're not our usual milk customers. So I'm not exactly sure what they do with it, honestly. Because my milk customers, I get to know them, and I can ask them questions. Okay. But there's something about that fat, right? Sarah, I already had my pigs when I was recommended to use that clinic that reveres Mangalitsas. I like beef and lamb the most. I can feed my 4 dogs with chicken and pork we don't sell or eat. Yeah, something to think about. If you keep a boar and they get all the pigs, they get big. They get to the point where they're just monsters. And you're wondering what to do with your boar. We've been doing this a long time, and I've tried everything. All right. They say, oh, you can castrate them and wait 3 months, wait 6 months, whatever. Not me. You know, I did that, and we could still taste the boar taint in him. And he was a monster, and we had all this meat that we processed, and it was not fit for us to eat. So it wound up going to the dogs, which is not a waste. I have livestock guardian dogs that I have to have here. I cannot function without them, and they have to eat. And so what we do now is when we get a boar and he gets really big and he's not interested in breeding the girls anymore, and the girls are real big and they're more interested in feed than they are with taking care of their babies, it's time. The boar, we say goodbye to him, shoot him, bring him to the shop, process him. We'll set out 10-pound bags. We call them chicken bags. We get them from Uline. And then we're processing him, and we're processing him with chunks of hide, with the ears, nose, all the organ meat. We kind of split it up throughout the bags, and then we put a tie wrap on them, freeze them, and then when winter comes, we take them out of the freezer and just let them be out, and they freeze. And about once or twice a week, we'll just set a bag out, and the dogs will get it, open it, chew on the frozen meat, take it, hide it, eat it, whatever they do. And then that's dog food that we're not buying. Hate buying dog food. Because I don't trust it, for one. But if you have a 800-pound boar pig, that's a lot of sustenance for your dogs. Us personally, we can't eat it because we have gotten their, I think it has to do with, you get their blood on your hands and it's got that testosterone in it or whatever it is, and you smell it on your hands, then you can smell it in the meat, and it's unacceptable. To me, I just wouldn't eat it, especially when you're cooking it. Ugh, smells like you're urinated in the frying pan to me. But then I have friends that say, no, we don't castrate our pigs. You don't castrate Mangalitzas. There's a site or a Facebook group called Mangalitza, and they are the experts on Mangalitza. But I've been doing it probably 10 years longer than all of them. And they will swear up and down that you don't castrate. Well, there's several members that will swear up and down that you don't have to castrate Mangalitzas. But it just doesn't work for me. And I have a friend out in New York. He does it all the time. And they have a food truck that they serve it out of. I don't know. It's a mystery. It's been funny to watch my dogs with pigs. They could run the pigs back into the pen at first. Now the pigs just laugh at the dogs. The dogs mostly gave up. Yeah. Running pigs is no fun. What I would recommend? You probably know this, but for any other listeners that are listening to this, all three of you, when you feed your pigs, I feed mine with a front end loader, right? So when they hear the tractor, they think it's time to eat. And I just go over to their pen and I dump feed in, right on the ground. I usually pick different spots all the time, and I'm feeding them bread. So I have a bread disposal contract with a company around here, and I get a lot of bread. I feed them hay. I feed them straw bales. I feed them chicken heads and feet and guts, because we have a chicken processing business on the farm too. And so I wind up with 2/3 of a yard of entrails every time. I split it into two groups. One goes to the feeders, one goes to the breeders. And by the time I go back out there, if I have to give them some more, if we clean up a little bit more, it's gone. So there is no flies, there's no smell. They turn it into pork, fat, and manure. And it's legit too. It seems a bit gross, but it's fresh chicken. So what could go wrong there, you know? And nothing has ever gone wrong. Nothing has gone wrong. There's no smell. But if you take those chicken guts and let's say, I'm going to compost them. Yeah, you're going to be setting out like a big bait pile, you know, and every critter from a mile around will come to dig through that pile and take out those nice stinky guts. And my dogs will do it too if they had access to it. They don't have access to it. Feathers, I compost. I compost the feathers. Nobody wants them. And the pigs don't eat them. I've tried. I mean, I know that in the industry, they will make feather meal out of them and they'll mix it in with their feed and the pigs don't have a choice but to eat it, but we don't do it. Composting is huge, you know, for the health of the fields. And so I don't feel as though the feathers are going to waste at all. Not even a little bit. You know, they're very beneficial to the compost. And a hot compost pile will break them down in a week, you know, because we're processing chickens every week. And so when I put the feathers on the pile, and it's a pile I've usually started with manure, with cow manure. I don't collect any pig manure ever because they disperse it. So I never have a big concentration of it. But the cows, yeah, like in the loafing barn, they all poop in there. And so I have to clean the floor a couple times a year and I get about 10 yards each time out of it. And I'll start a new pile in the spring with that. The bedding from the winter. And you can game that too. So in the loafing shed, they manure in there, but we put straw down. And sometimes before I put the straw down, I'll spread some shell corn out. Right. And then I haven't done this in years because it's labor intensive, but you can, like my loafing area is actually 3 concrete walls with a door, a big sliding door. And so I can close that door and I can put pigs in there. And if I've put shell corn down, you know, it's layered, you know, in the manure and the straw and whatever else we're using for bedding, wood chips. And then the pigs will turn that all up and it makes it real easy for me to get in there and scoop it out. And it's aerated. So then when I start a pile, it's already making heat. And then when I load the pile with feathers, what I do is I'll pull the pile open with the bucket of the tractor, and then I dump the feathers in it and I close it back up. And by the next week, all that moisture and bacteria and everything, the feathers are gone. They are gone. They've turned, you know, the creatures that are in the compost pile, they go wild. They eat that. And then I have a spreader, and it's a little bit, it's my design, and it's really effective. I won't go into it now, but after I cut a field and take the hay off of it, then I can go out there with this spreader and I can spread that compost, and man, what a kick. What a kick you get from that. And it's not a temporary kick either. It's a lifelong kick that you get because I'm putting different bacteria out there. And the way I do it is this spreader puts it in small piles that it looks, well, what it is, it's a round tank, a 300-gallon fuel tank, round, that I put an axle through and a tow bar on the front. And then I cut holes that are about 3 inches in diameter in rows on this, and I tried to stagger them neatly and in a door, so I can load 3 tractor in it and then close the door, and then it's hooked to the Jeep, and then I'll just roll it down the field. And what it does, it deposits dots that are about this big around and about this high. And the compost is moist. And so, and I put biochar in it too. And when these dots hit the ground, they stay there. And then it's a good environment for the biology that's in that. And then it propagates out into the soil. And you want to talk about a kick on a hayfield. Wow. Should be legal. But you're never going to read about it in textbooks because it'll put fertilizer companies out of business. I have a big truck and I go to neighbors and I say, you doing anything with that pile of manure there? And they think that I'm growing dope here or something because I'm crazy enough to take their manure off their hands. But manure is huge as a fertilizer. Okay, Sarah, again, this is just me and Sarah and a couple other people. The pigs go back to their pasture at night and snuggle back most of the day there. They explore the farm when it's cool. Yeah, until they start tearing things up, and then you're not going to. Sarah says, I love red Mangalites is the best. I sold my boar and most of the piglets when I found out about cancer. I have one pet barrow. Wait a minute. Am I missing this wrong? Did you get cancer? Or are Mangalites the key to it? Maybe I'm reading this wrong. I have one pet barrow. He's like a farm mascot, and I have 4 youngsters and their mamas. Okay. I know the farmer who loves permaculture and gets trailers full of produce scraps. They sit out and mold, and then he feeds them to his pigs, and he gives them no water because he thinks they get enough. Yeah, I don't know. That's a risk mitigation thing. I don't know if I would feel comfortable doing that. I would put it all out for them, but I don't know if I'd let it sit there and mold. And as far as them getting the moisture that they need out of the feed, there is truth to that. I learned Mangalitsa from a guy by the name of Christoph Wiesner, and he was contracted to come to the States. Somebody else paid him to do it, and I just sat in on the class. But he raised Mangalitsas in Austria, and he was actually the exporter to the United States. So this guy knows his stuff. Doesn't speak English real good, but he was telling me that if you can get potatoes, oh yeah, you can feed the potatoes to your pigs. Now, he did say that you should cook the potatoes so that they can eat them. And I started doing that for a while. And then I started just giving them to them raw, and it didn't seem to make a big difference. But people told me that, oh no, they'll choke on them if they're raw. I didn't have one pig choke. Now, cows will. At least I've been told they will. But I don't know. I don't know about that. I've never done it. But we have potato growers around here. And I know some of them. And one year I went to them and I said, could I get some potatoes from you? Maybe the ones that are cut or too big or too small or whatever. And they said, oh yeah. And they sold them to me at a really good rate. And I brought them home and I had a massive pile of potatoes. But then I started to get a little concerned because these guys use lots of chemicals. So I put that on hold and I never picked it up again. But in that time, I never watered them because Christoph told me that, oh no, there's enough water in those potatoes that they won't even be interested in water. And that's how I started doing the whole snow thing, and where he is in Austria, they get tons of snow and they never water them in the wintertime. So, but molding, I don't know. Not that I've never fed anything that wasn't moldy, because I have, and we've never had a problem. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, your summers are hot and dry there. Yeah, no, I would make sure they had water. I want a manure spreader one day. The improvements in pasture just from the birds and ruminants has been incredible. Yeah, if Robert Kennedy was sitting next to me, that would be one of the things that I would say. These animals were the flora and the fauna were created to be together. And why we take the fauna and put them on concrete under a roof so they can't get rain and sun seems dumb to me. It just seems dumb. Imagine if you scaled up a growing operation and you cultivated 10 acres and you planted turnips in it. Do you know how much food there is out there? And then you let the pigs self-harvest it incrementally. How effective that would be. Never mind manure management, fertility of the soil, and the whole solar collection that you're doing. That seems to make sense. That's where you're going to really make the gains. Okay. Yes, I had triple positive breast cancer and used the Paleomedicina clinic to treat it, plus a lumpectomy. Oh, well, that's good. So far, so good, and praying it never returns. Well, I'll join you in that. That's a terrible thing. Sorry to hear that, but I hope you make it. I think, yeah, nowadays, I mean, there's a lot of information about cancer. And oh, but you're saying the people at that clinic loved the Mangalitsa, but they weren't saying it was a cure for Mangalitsa. Okay, I get it. But I think that Mangalitsa is a very consistent with the human body, and the nature of the pig makes for extremely nutrient dense. And if your body is nutrient dense, it should be able to, self-seal, self-fix. All right. There's still 3 of us here. Is there any more things that I can talk about here? Wow, 10:56. Long show tonight. 8, 9, 10, 11. That's the longest show I've ever done. But like I said, I'm riding high, feeling good, loving my farming operation. I am hoping to plant for the pigs. Yeah, I do it all the time, and you can watch my videos how I do it. But if you're planting for human consumption, spacing is critical. But if you're planting for pig consumption, if you get real big ones, no problem. If you get real little ones, no problem. If they're wormy, no problem. If they're split, no problem. I grow field peas and I plant them thick. And you wouldn't do that if you were planting it for human consumption, because you have to harvest them. But if it's planting for pigs, the more pea pods that are out there, the better. And they don't just eat the pea pods. They clean it right off. If you watch my videos on that Baker's Green Acres YouTube, you can see my grow fields. I have 3 consecutive fields that are connected with fencing system, so I can move them from field 1 to field 3, or field 2 to field 3, or any way I want to. And so I'm constantly having the pigs harvest, and then I'm planting behind them. And it's really productive because the fertility of the soil goes up, and the growth rate of whatever I plant in it goes through the roof. And the good news is, if you don't get around to planting it, the weeds come up. And what comes up real good? Lamb's quarter, amaranth, ragweed. They come up like crazy, right? And the old me would look at that and say, oh, freaking weeds. But the new me says, outstanding, because it's probably what they should be eating anyway. It's just my small man mind that thinks turnips are probably better. Turnips make a better video, but really, they eat turnips at the same rate that they will eat amaranth. And amaranth around here grows like sick. I mean, it seems to grow a foot a night. So today, when did this happen? About 3 o'clock. We just finished eating, hot as blazes, went for a swim. Then it starts clouding up, and I had some work to do outside. Well, it rained. We got an inch of rain, and then the clouds parted, blazing sun again. That was a gift wrapped up with a bow on it that had my name on it. Because what did that do? It hammered all my pastures with water. And then before it was even dry, sun. Got an 80-degree night. My grass is going to grow tonight, which means less bales that I have to feed. You know, my growing season is going to be longer. Where the old guy would have said, frickin' rain. You know, damn it. I don't see it that way anymore. And now I've just got to get to the place where those 30-degree below zero, I got to say, oh, isn't this wonderful? I'm so lucky. I'm not there yet. But I'm working on it. All right. Cool. Sarah says, I love you. Great. I'm glad you like my videos. Makes it worth it. One person says they like it. All right. Hope I meet you someday. Come on out for a class. I got friends in Oregon too. If you are looking to network with some people, good friends of mine called Helios Farm. They're good people. You could drive right up the driveway and tell them I sent you. All right. I guess I'll get going. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming. And remember, anyone can farm.